never forget Western intelligence, that is the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, MI5, and a whole lot of them, because those were the architects. So the whole idea of dividing Africa into states, basically it's companies. We are not a sovereign state. It was to make the exploitation and the extraction of profit from African resources very manageable, very easy, so that if you get out of line, they can easily trigger destabilization. So they do that, and that is part of what their Western intelligence organizations do. Whenever you see destabilization, wars, coups going on in Africa, I want all African people globally to know this. It's the works of Western intelligence. The Central Intelligence Agency, MI6, you must look, and you must always ask yourself the question, what is behind the behind? Hello, sanibonani to all viewers and listeners. My name is Dr. Malusi Mncube. To all viewers and listeners, I want to emphasize that it is very important for you to listen to or to watch this conversation till the end in order to avoid missing information, pieces, and puzzles that connect to form the central objective of this conversation today. Through all the channels, this content will be distributed via. May this conversation reach both the ears of the expert and the non-expert in the subjects and topics discussed between myself and the host today. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode, another interesting episode, by the way. If you remember, this gentleman that is sitting right next to me here was actually the first guest here. We recorded here our first episode of Break It Down podcast, which performed very, very well on YouTube. That was last year, 2024. Today, I'm back with Dr. Malusi Mncube, who's going to be taking me through some of the information about, what's happening in the DRC, the relationship between DRC, Rwanda, the reason why the whole thing is actually taking place. Dr. Malusi, welcome to Break It Down again.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the listeners and viewers. Sanbonani, Dumelang kaofela, Moribwanji, Nyanbulisa nonke.
100%. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming back. We're supposed to actually do our second episode last year. Somehow we ended up not being able to honor that promise, but we're here. We're here 2025.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How are you doing?
On top of the world.
Yeah.
We thank God and the ancestors on top of the world.
Okay.
And we must use our strength to unify Africa and to bring power to humanity, not the few greedy, genocidal global elite.
Yeah. People loved your episode last time. The comments were full of love, were full of appreciation. A lot of people were saying, I didn't know there are such human beings here in South Africa. You've got a whole lot of people that are going on the news as political analysts or as whatever, but they are not really giving context in the way that you did in our last episode. So I would love to let you know of that.
Thank you very much. I mean, what do you expect if I belong to the ancestry of Steve Biko, Robert Sobukwe, Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Nkosi Bambata, Nkosi Tshwane, Nkosi Ngubela?
Wow.
So I belong to their DNA stock. So what do you expect? We learn from the best.
Yeah.
Africans are the best because nobody is inferior to anybody. So our ideology of Ubuntu says there's nobody who's superior. We are all of the same stocks, all of the same level.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, that's a very interesting view, especially when you look at the concept of Ubuntu. It's almost our DNA. It's our philosophy that is embedded in our DNA. You don't have to look at it from a conceptual point of view. Just look at how we live. Just look at how we take care of one another. And even some of the principles that we advocate for, even in spaces such as government, parliament and all of that, they all resembles Ubuntu.
Absolutely. And Ubuntu doesn't mean that you're a softie. It doesn't mean that you're not principled. It doesn't mean that you don't have tough love. When you really practice Ubuntu, it means you have tough love, you are disciplined, you are relentless, and you cannot be pushed around, which is what is happening with the global awakening of humanity, the global awakening of Africa. We are going back to the greatest philosophy ever that has traversed this world. That is ubuntu. Umuntu ngomuntu ngabantu. Anybody who preaches anything other than that and saying they only are the superior ones, that is totally antithetical to Ubuntu. So Ubuntu is the most superior because it brings about everybody, it brings about the Most High, it brings about all the ancestors.
Wow.
Yes, I am because we are because I am. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yes.
We could talk about Ubuntu and collective consciousness the whole day, because that's another topic that we can unpack for the next hour. But today we're going to touch, we're going to go in the north, of the continent, where we've seen that it's not really nice,
Absolutely.
with the visuals on the news and everything that is happening. I'm talking about the Democratic Republic of Congo, knowing that it is one of the country that actually, with some of the richest minerals, in this continent. I mean, the continent itself is full of minerals, but we know that Congo is one of the countries that actually supplies a lot of important minerals, even outside of, the continent, to the rest of the world. But there's a war that has been happening there, and it's been happening for decades. Can you please take us through? For someone who is even hearing about it yesterday, they think maybe some people don't even have context. They think maybe Rwanda, Ramaphosa, these are just players of, people that are now contributing outside of this war. But actually, there's something deeper about this war. Can you please give us some context there?
Okay. Let's give it a historical context.
Yes, please.
From the first time the King Demon came from Belgium, one of the greatest demons in the world. Some of you call him Leopold. I don't even want to call him king. He's a demon king, whatever.
Yeah.
He exterminated over 20 million Congolese. So you can imagine. So it started from the day after the Berlin Conference and after they allocated themselves, selfishly so, genocidally so, portions of Africa to suit their exploitative imperialistic design. So it has never stopped since then. Then Patrice Lumumba tried in the 60s. You saw what happened when he told the Belgians, now we're not going to be your poodles. We're not going to be, and we are going to fight tooth and nail to free ourselves economically and otherwise, and they got rid of him. With the help, of course, never forget Western intelligence, that is the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, MI5, and a whole lot of them, because those were the architects. So the whole idea of dividing Africa into states, basically it's companies. We are not a sovereign state. It was to make the exploitation and the extraction of profit from Africa and resources very manageable, very easy, so that if you get out of line, they can easily trigger destabilization. So they do that, and that is part of what their Western intelligence organizations do. From the first time the King Demon came from Belgium, one of the greatest demons in the world. Some of you call him Leopold. I don't even want to call him king. He's a demon king, whatever.
Yeah.
He exterminated over 20 million Congolese. So you can imagine. So it started from the day after the Berlin Conference and after they allocated themselves, selfishly so, genocidally so, portions of Africa to suit their exploitative imperialistic design. They still bring the finished resources to us, so we buy them on a basis of debt, not even cash basis, on a debt basis. So there is no way they are going to let Africa go. So having given that historical background, what is happening today, it's a continuation of that. And actually the exploiters, the imperialists, what they've done, they've even masterminded and polished their evil design, and they will not stop. This is nothing. The West is still going to come, not just for the DRC, for the whole of Africa, given that the Eurocentric powers are now facing serious global competition from who? From China, from who? From Russia,
yeah.
from who? From the BRICS countries and all that. So basically, as much as the Eurocentric world is still powerful in the name of NATO and being led by America, they're still powerful, but they're declining. There are areas now they cannot compete. They're even trying to stop that competition in terms of manufacturing, in terms of semiconductors, in terms of quantum computing, and I can go on and on and on. They cannot. They've actually met their match, and that match has come in the form of time to say every empire rises and every empire goes down. But in their going down, they will want to take everybody with them. So we're living in interesting times, but there's still a lot of people that are going to lose their lives. So having given that historical context, when they drew the borders of the whole of Africa, even the DRC Congo, right, you will find that in Rwanda and on the DRC side, it was the same people, like you were just telling me right now. If you go to the Beitbridge border, if you go to the Swazi border, to the Lesotho border, if you go to the, we are the same people. You will find in Free State here in South Africa, they are related to the Sothos from Lesotho, right? But we are different countries. We must always remember that a country,
Botswana,
yes,
Northwest,
absolutely. We must always remember that a country, it's a social construct. It's created, it's like writing a book. It's created at a certain historical point in time. For instance, the Zulus are not more than 500 years old, right? They're about, I stand for correction, about 200 to 250 years old. Even the Tswanas and whatever. That's why when you go into DNA genetic study, that's why we all breathe the same air, breathe in and breathe out. That's why we can all procreate with any woman in the world, whether they're American, they're Japanese, they're from Zambia, from wherever, because human beings are from the same DNA stock. But your country is not intrinsic, but your DNA stock is intrinsic, right? So it's a social construct. For instance, in was it 1980 when it used, before that it used to be Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, remember?
Yeah.
But in 1980 it became Zimbabwe with a new constitution. That's a social construct.
Yeah.
It's not intrinsic. It's intrinsic that you're born of a man and a woman.
Yeah.
But to have South Africa with a new constitution, the new constitution we have in South Africa here, it's a social construct, and there's nothing wrong with that. So what you have in the DRC, right, what you have in the DRC, you will definitely have relatives who are in Rwanda, who are in Uganda, even going further. Because even the Tutsis or Hutus who are in Rwanda right now, they do have relatives if you go all the way around. Because remember, human beings have been migrating for billions and billions and billions of years.
Yeah.
If I trace you, Elvis, if I trace you, nobody knows how far back time goes. Yes, they can come with their carbon dating and tell us, oh, it's about 250,000 years old or 250 million years old. It's all intelligent guessing, but nobody knows exactly how old life is. So your ancestry, if I ask you today, how old do you think your ancestry is? You don't know for certain, right?
Of course. I mean, I can't.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
I can obviously look at maybe some of the people that came before, but even that doesn't prove that I can get to the beginning.
Do you understand?
Of time? Yeah.
So even the very Tutsis, they are actually related through DNA with the very Hutus.
And for context,
Yeah.
the Hutus, the Tutsis, can you please explain what are those? Are those tribes?
Yeah, those are
Congo?
tribes.
Yeah.
Those are tribes. Just to give an analogy, those are tribes like, for instance, the Zulus and Xhosas, Tswanas and Bedis, Tongas and Vendas, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we are the same people.
So in Congo, we have who's occupying?
In Congo, I think, I stand for correction, there should be about 425 to 450 tribes.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. 450 tribes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's different languages, different dialects and all that.
Yeah.
So it's quite a lot. But if you want to see how intrinsic, as I gave an example, what intrinsic means, what you really are, we are all from the same stock. All this thing of saying, I'm Tutsi, I'm Zulu, I'm this, it's all a social construct, and usually it's done because people want to amass certain power against a certain group so that they are more privileged than that. And none other than Kwame Nkrumah saw this as late as 1958 when he took over Ghana. He said the independence of Ghana means nothing until the whole total of Africa is independent and we become a United States of Africa, to do away with this tribalism. Not to say tribes are bad per se, but when they are used to divide ones against the other. But also what's happening in the DRC, it's not just a question of tribes, to say Tutsis, they're not the Nyamulenges in Kivu, they're not supposed to be there, they must go back home. No, they are home, right? Kagame is as related to Tshisekedi and he's as related to Kabila and to anybody. Wow. We are all of the same stock. So people must move beyond that, and Kwame Nkrumah moved beyond that. That's why Kwame Nkrumah was fighting for the United States of Africa. It can be federal, but certain things we have to be of one voice and one doing and one policy measure. What do I mean by that? For instance, your foreign policy, your army and your police, then other things can be localized. You prevent things like this, because right now, the great powers that have been exploiting us, the imperialists, they use that in a very advanced manner to keep on dividing us, to make it look like it's a Tutsi and a Hutu thing. But it's greater than that, because if that whole region of Goma did not have strategic minerals that run the whole world, that run the fourth industrial revolution, we wouldn't be having what we're having today.
So the war now is about minerals.
It's definitely about minerals, but they will make it intelligently look as if it's a Tutsi Hutu rebel, like which on one side of the coin it is, but that is not fundamentally what it is. What it is fundamentally, it's about the minerals, right? Because now you can see in China, the biggest trading partner of the whole of Africa, it's now China. And Russia is making inroads. So who's feeling the heat here?
The USA.
The USA is feeling the heat, right? So when they come, because they are devilishly intelligent, they will not come and say, no, we're taking over like old school colonialism. It doesn't work that way. They will try and amplify your egos about being Zulu, about being Shona, about being Chewa, about being Kikuyu. They'll amplify that, and they do it in a very refined way. And because that's what intelligence and counterintelligence and all those things, that's what it is all about. And they flate up. And also what they do with our leaders, as you and I'm saying this to all young men who are climbing up, as you join politics and you become active and all that, be very careful of the things that you do, because they gather information, especially in this electronic media. They gather as much information about you. Some of our leaders are very, very compromised. I'm sure you saw one of the Ghanaian leaders ratting out to Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State of the United States of America, telling him the troops of Ibrahim Traore, they are making moves around the borders and all that. Do you understand? Right? So you get African leaders when they are coming to power, especially when they're coming to power, they will tell you things you want to hear. They'll speak Pan-Africanism, like one of the Kenyan leaders, he spoke Pan-Africanism and say, we're about this, we have to do this. Same with the Ghanaian leader, say that. So you'll find a lot of our African leaders, when they come in, they will tell us what we want to hear. Midstream, immediately they change, because certain people have them by the BALLS. And they are highly, highly compromised. So part of the contestation of how we want to bring about this free Africa is the youth and everybody else must put maximum pressure on colonizers, must put maximum pressure on Africans who are compromised and of African sellout puppet leadership. They are not going to do it alone. Everybody, what you are doing, what everybody's doing, we must not give these leaders a breathing space. So what is happening here is because Goma is very strategic. Even from the time of Patrice Lumumba, they wanted to divide the DRC into many parts. It's not something new. It's an ongoing thing. And they are going to come up with more strategies to bring about division. I mean, you can even hear in South Africa sentiments of Orania, sentiments of Western Cape must secede. Those are warnings. They're not joking.
And, you know, when I look at this, actually you're giving me now a greater perspective, because when you're speaking about Orania, I'm thinking all of these wars, when you look at Ukraine, what was happening in Ukraine, that was a proxy war. It wasn't necessarily between Ukraine and Russia. Much as it was used as a battleground. You go to Israel, what happened in Palestine, right? Then you look at the countries that are at play there.
Right. Yeah.
You realize that actually the land where the war is being fought at.
Absolutely.
It has nothing to do with, of course it has everything to do because they're targeting those people. But at the same time, it's people like you were saying, they're trying to access the minerals. Then they're going to make it a tribal thing that, we're supporting this tribe, the other one will support this tribe.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, we know that the superpowers are the ones that are going to gain.
Absolutely.
Are we looking at something like that?
Definitely. I want to say to the viewers and listeners, and some of them, many of them know, but even those who don't know, whenever you see destabilization, wars, coups going on in Africa, I want all African people globally to know this. It's the works of Western intelligence. The Central Intelligence Agency, MI6, you must look, and you must always ask yourself the question, what is behind the behind? Right? So there is no destabilization that can be mechanized without anybody funding it, in terms of training, in terms of money, in terms of knowledge power, in terms of airlift support. That could be helicopters, aeroplanes, etc., etc. So certain powers have got that type of capability. For instance, what happened in Mozambique, Cabo Delgado. All of a sudden, we have these jihadist insurgents, and they were causing havoc and all that. Where do they get the training? Who gives them money, the knowledge? And for them, with such rapidity and speed to be able to commit what they are committing.
And so much confidence.
So much confidence. So I want our young people, I want to tell you, Western intelligence organizations, they're involved, because Africa is a repository for the resources that they want, and they will not stop. And they will not allow Africa to be as developed as they are, because they don't want that competition. They do not believe in competition. They tell you they believe in a market-free economy. No, they believe in being monopolies, but they sell you the idea that there must be competition. No, they believe in monopoly. Always know imperialists believe in a monopoly. That's why they want to be the only nuclear powers in it. This whole story you hear, even in companies, no, you must sell your state assets because there must be competition. It's all nonsense. I don't care which president is saying it and all that. I will debate anyone. It's all nonsense. Because at the end of the day, those state assets, you must look at who buys them. It's bought by people who have the money, and from where? And it's people who are imperialists. They can use front people, for instance, who are as black as me, right? But at the end of the day, if you trace where that money is coming from, you can see this is neocolonialism. So neocolonialism doesn't believe in competition. They thwart every competition. That's why they don't want Iran right now to have nuclear weapons. That's why they're trying to frustrate also North Korea. That's why they're disappointed that Russia, from when Stalin took over, managed to nuclearize. That's why also Africa, in the short term, if they can, even if it's just one state, we must also nuclearize. Africans must be global. We must not just see ourselves in our politics and the lives of our children who are going to leave them. To see yourself only as a South African, Lesotho, Zimbabwean, Malawian, it's very myopic, and it's very dangerous. One of our greatest leaders in Africa, Kwame Nkrumah, said that is going to get us into danger, and that is going to get us enslaved. And it's true. Our outlook and how our policies must always be global. It's just that some of our leaders are compromised, very, very compromised, and they are making money out of this. Some of them have monies in France, they have monies in Europe, they have monies in EU. So every time you speak about Pan-Africanism, not to say Pan-Africanism is perfect, but I guarantee you Pan-Africanism is the greatest ideology for the black man in this world today. We must think from a global perspective, everything we do. And for starters, we must have one currency, we must have one reserve bank for the whole of Africa, and we must allow free movement of people. And that can be controlled. It doesn't mean we must do it just carelessly. No. It can be intelligently, tactfully implemented. This is what we're talking about. So the journey of that million miles, we must begin to move it now, because Africans, you are in danger. Africans, you will be exterminated if you think this is a picnic. It's not. You saw what was happening in Gaza. You see what is happening. Nobody is even speaking about Sudan. Sudan is at a standstill. Standstill, and nobody's speaking about Sudan. Yes, we must speak about DRC and other countries in Africa, but Sudan, nothing is happening. They stopped it. There's a war going on in there. And when you see there's a war going on, the CIA is involved, the Americans are involved, Europe is involved, you must know somebody's getting paid, because war is another means of economics. It's another means of business.
So war is a commodity.
Of course, it is a commodity. You dying, them exterminating you, it is a commodity, definitely. Somebody's getting paid. From the bullets that are made, the guns that are made, the trucks, the weapons they feed, destabilizing you, all that. All right. And whilst they are doing that...
And the media platforms as well. That's
absolutely.
Where they cash in, yeah.
Whilst they are doing that, they're busy extracting minerals. I can give you many examples that they've just done it in Syria right now, right? From 2011, when the Russians went in and the Americans are there, they've been extracting. The Americans have been extracting even right now. America is illegally occupying strategic areas in what you call in Syria and also in Africa. Just recently, they went and bombed Somalia. What gives them the right? So this is what is happening. It's really, 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 yes, it can, to a simple mind, it can work out as if it's a Tutsi Hutu thing or a Kagame thing against Tshisekedi thing.
Yeah.
No, it's really about the minerals and controlling Africa and not allowing Africa to stand up and for Africa to be like China, for Africa to be like Russia, to be like America. So it's really about minerals. And some of our leaders, because they are compromised, because they sold their souls to the devil, they're easily controlled. They cannot even become Thomas Sankaras. They cannot even become Ibrahim Traores because they are so compromised, because they've got so much on them. There is nothing they can do. It's about minerals. Yeah. Africa must know that.
I wanted you to take me through your views before we wrap up the conversation. Your views around, we've seen Ramaphosa as part of, he has been the president of AU at some time, has led the African Union. And I will still reference from the time you and I, when we met at the African Union at 20, when they were celebrating.
Absolutely,
yes, 20 years. And there was a book that they were launching, right, that was detailing, from the transition also from the OAU to the AU.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And you look at some of the chapters there where they were talking about peace and security, and they say one of the mandate that they are actually pressing on from the time when they were celebrating 20 years is to actually make sure that there's peace and stability within the country.
Absolutely.
Now, the reason why I'm talking to you about this is because I want you to give me your view on the AU's intervention in the DRC. South Africa as well as being a member state within the AU. Now the whole thing is being turned around to be a Ramaphosa, Rwanda, Paul Kagame thing. What is your view around that?
No, not just my view. The truth about this whole thing. Before South Africa went in there, they got the mandate from the African Union. And the African Union Peace and Security Council, which looks into matters of peace-keeping operations and peace in Africa.
Yeah.
It's a body, it's a 15-member body, the Peace and Security Council. Right? They actually mandated South Africa to go in as a peacekeeping, what you call, outfit.
Yeah.
Into the DRC. So South Africa did not do that on its own. And what they do, the African Union also, they call it the element of subsidiarity, meaning that the principle of subsidiarity, they work closest with the regional economic community that is around that area. So in Africa, we've got 8, and SADC is one of them. So it is closest. So the mandate came from the African Union, and it was reinforced with the SADC, and South Africa went in. That's what happens. And why they use a closest REC, or what they call a regional mechanism, which is SADC, because number one, proximity. We are closer to the DRC. Number two, the histories. Remember, under the ages of Thabo Mbeki, we came about with the facilitation of peace of all that. So we've got that institutional memory and all that. So it made sense that SADC. And who is in SADC? It's not just South Africa, right? It's Mozambique, it's Angola, it's Namibia, it's Zimbabwe, and all that. So there is a continental mandate for South Africa to have gone in there. So, and Lorenzo, the president of Angola, because of the mandate of SADC, called for discussions to find a peaceful solution to the DRC, right? And I understand, I stand for correction there. I understand some of the parties did not turn up. And which are some of those parties? Wow. It was Rwanda. Rwanda was never there. But now when you listen on other interviews, some of the leaders will tell, no, Rwanda was there. Right. So, no. So I want viewers and listeners, what they must understand when they hear some of our leaders speak, no matter how much we can love them, especially where colonizers are involved and they want these minerals. When some of our leaders are speaking, it doesn't matter which leader and how much you trust them, right? It can be Mbeki, it can be Zuma, it can be Kagame and all that. Some of the things they say and they want to buttress their position, support their position, it doesn't necessarily mean they will tell you everything. They do have certain confidential things, certain secret things they cannot say. So sometimes they can
especially in the media.
Yeah, especially in the media.
Yeah.
So for instance, if there's an interview about Ramaphosa, he might tell you the truth but not the whole truth. If it's Kagame, he might tell you a little bit of that truth but not the whole truth. So take everything with a pinch of salt. What President Kagame says, or what President Ramaphosa says, or whatever president, because the Rwanda issue is a very sensitive issue. Very sensitive. Yeah. It's not about this tribal affair. Yes, they've roped it in to make it look like, because now it's costing people's life. And it does. It ends up looking like it because it looks like a duck. It quacks like a duck. It becomes, you will think. So to a mind that is not trained, you will think it's really a tribal issue, right? But it's really not. And I quickly want to say also, speaking about people taking things with a pinch of salt, this is not coming from me. There's literature, it's public literature, it's there. There's also another school of thought that says President Kagame, right, was the mastermind of the Tutsi genocide. This is not me. The literature is there. I can afford it to you. These are other people. It might not be true. You never know. It's this is what I'm trying to warn viewers and what you call. They actually said, seeing that the Tutsis are a minority, they could never, even when they went to the election, they could never beat the Hutus. Actually, they were responsible for shooting that plane because it was going to ignite this genocide that happened. So there are journalists who've written the books that have been written. Yes, they are not very popular books, and there are people who say that Kagame and his military outfit, they actually masterminded that so that they could take over Rwanda without any free and fair elections.
And without any competitors.
So theoretically, that's a possibility.
But is that true?
No, we don't know. Yeah, I cannot even find the evidence. But as scholars, as young people, as everyone who looks around, I'm trying to say, wherever your information comes from, look at it with a pinch of salt. Yeah. Don't just say, because President Ramaphosa said this, President Thabo Mbeki said this, President Zuma says this, everything hook, line, and sinker is true. Yeah. Right. What will you do tomorrow? You wake up in heaven tomorrow and you find that President Kagame was behind the Tutsi thing, together with the Americans and CIA. What will you say?
And nobody ever thought about it.
What will you say that the people who funded Hitler were actually the Americans? Today we know it's true. Today, because of what South Africa did, today we know it's true. The people who are funding Netanyahu is the Americans, supplying weapons. And what are those weapons doing?
They're killing people.
Not just killing. They are ethnic cleansing, genocide. Hence, South Africa put a case. So they cannot hide it because of digital media and all that. It's all in the... That's why South Africa stood up. Because tomorrow it will be us. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes. Now we have proof. No, now, if the Americans can do this today and supply weaponry and money to Israel...
They can also do it to us.
And they can do it to Ukraine. Do you know how many Ukrainians, I'm talking about people who are blonde and white and blue eyes, are in exile? It's more than 10 million. If they can do it, how many Ukrainians who are white have been killed and died? Is it not a theoretical possibility? Maybe the same Americans, they funded Hitler? Who's to say? So we must be very, very careful. So all I'm saying to our upcoming leaders and youngsters, don't be taken in by the rhetoric of President Ramaphosa or President Kagame or President Tshisekedi. You must be very, very careful. The West is fighting for its lies.
Yeah.
They will use every trick in the book to dominate Africa because from slavery right up to now, they've never seen black people as human beings. They've seen them as instruments to amass their wealth. Do you know how many people were bombed by the Americans in Iraq? Women and children. Over 1 million. And even after that, sanctions that were put on Iraq that compromised the lives of children. So do you understand? So we have all over the world, in Africa and all over the world, men and women who put on ties and want to look respectable. But we are dealing with imperialistic thugs because that's what they are. They are thugs. They are mass murderers. There is nothing beautiful and civilizational about colonizers. There is nothing. And there's no civilization they brought to Africa. Because what they really are, they are very insecure and they are mass murderers. We know in South Africa what happened here. We know our forefathers all over Africa, they had to fight for over years to get Africa liberated. That little liberation we had. So there is nothing civilizational about them. And they are drawing in some of our leaders. We must be very careful about our leaders when they speak Pan-Africanism and when they invoke the names of the Steve Bikos, of the Nyereres, when actually they are fine-tuning to put us to sleep, to put us right. So for me, you must be like Thomas Sankara.
Dr. Malusi, thank you so much. I wish we had more time to actually unpack this because the next question that I was going to ask you was related to Cyril Ramaphosa, but I wish that we can also have another time where we can unpack some of these things, including, of course, what's happening in Burkina Faso right now. You spoke about, we've seen a lot of coups, obviously, Niger, Burkina Faso. What was the other country again?
Mali.
Was it Mali?
Yes.
Yeah, Mali.
Those three countries, just quickly, they've separated themselves from ECOWAS,
yes,
which is a regional economic community
West.
of the African Union. They're affiliated to the African Union. Okay. So they've moved away. They will not become part of the politics of being compromised because some of our leaders are definitely working with the West to suppress our people. I take exception to Africa's leaders who are billionaires and millionaires. And we don't have free education. We don't have free health. And our people are not working. They don't have a basic income. But they make sure, as our leaders, they put on the most expensive suits, most expensive cars, and most expensive houses. And they go on holidays. And they say they are revolutionary. If you are a revolutionary, be like Thomas Sankara. So some of our leaders, Africa's leaders, they are damn right selling us out.
Yeah, so
they are. And they must be challenged. It's your job.
100%. And with this platform, that's what we are trying to do, to get people like you with views like, yours that are able to open the mind. I mean, you spoke about the way we should be open-minded when we read information, when we consume information from the media and whatever these leaders are saying. So I wish to actually thank you for your time. Like I said, I wish we had more time, but unfortunately, there's going to be another session here. So for next time, we can be looking looking at something like that. But thank you so much for making it here. If you have watched up until this time, I'd love to also give a shout out to you and say thank you very much for watching up until this time. The name of my podcast is is Break It Down podcast with Elvis Mulifimolf. And of course, we discuss politics, religion, worldviews. We also discuss spirituality, self-mastery, and philosophy. My guest today, Dr. Malusi Mncube, was here to actually, share a little bit of light, especially with what's happening in the DRC, but also give you a little bit of perspective into the African politics, because a lot of us who live in the African continent, we are so glued up or clued up as well with the politics that are happening in the West. But when it happens, when it comes to things that are happening in the continent, we don't tend to actually have interest. So Dr. Malusi is here, and if you want to see him again, please in the comment section let me know so we can bring him back and make more time for him to actually give you more context. Thank you so much.
Thank you to the viewers and thank you to the listeners. Thank you very
Cheers.
much.